Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Making Sense of the World on the Siren Network. I'm your host, Joel Rubin. I'm super excited today to be speaking with my dear friend, Dr. Nola Haynes, a new friend. And it's always wonderful to make new friends in Washington, and I count Nola on that, largely because of work connections. But really, I just deeply admire her and her work and her courage and her leadership. And so we're going to get into all of that as well as some issues and whatnot. But just for background, Dr. Haynes is a leading authority on nuclear weapons issues, on national security writ large, on Russia-Ukraine policy, counterterrorism. Her bio speaks for itself, including having served on the International Security Advisory Board, advising Secretary Blinken during the Biden administration on these issues. And so we are really fortunate to have her here with us today. So Nola, a quick hi to you, and maybe I'll ask you to chime in. Then I'm going to dive right into some questions for you.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here, friend.
There, that wasn't stilted. I didn't force that enough, did I? Still learning how to host. I'm not Nola yet. But look, I'm so excited to talk to you for a variety of reasons. But one is, of course, a post that you just put out on your Substack this morning, talking about foreign policy and politics, and that's really the reason, the rationale for this podcast is to make sure that foreign policy is accessible to the American people in a way that makes sense and in a
Mhm.
way that they understand so they can make decisions based on that affect our political leadership in the direction of our country. But I loved your piece today. I don't want to give away the title. I want you to tell us, why did you write it? What's it about? And what's your real thesis about foreign policy and politics?
Well, so I'm really enjoying the cicada music in the background. Being from the South, it's kind of soothing.
No,
Uh,
no.
um, so my inspiration honestly was being talking to you today. I woke up at like 4 or 5 o'clock this morning, and I just started writing, wanting to
Nice.
put some data together that I'm really excited about because I'm a political scientist. So of course I love data. Uh, so my thesis really is why foreign policy matters, beyond our bubble, right? Why it matters for voting, and to kind of challenge that old adage in our community that foreign policy doesn't, win elections. And what we saw in 24,
Yep.
especially with Israel and Gaza, with the younger voting population, what we saw in Michigan, I think foreign policy would like a word. They have a thing or two to say. And also with this new term that I created at 4 o'clock this morning, political commentator influencers,
It's a good one. It's a good one.
PCIs. Thank you.
PCI, brand it. Trademark that sucker.
This new way of getting information, this new media landscape that we are both, in right now. We've been in traditional media, we've been surrogates, we've sat in the National Security Council meetings and got our marching orders to go out and message to the world. And here we are now in this new media space. And the way people are receiving their information is a lot different than tuning into CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, or you're tuning into your favorite influencer that you trust, your favorite content creator that you trust. So someone who has no background in foreign policy, I guarantee you right now, is talking about Russia and Ukraine. I guarantee you.
Damn straight.
Right.
That's
You
right.
know? Yeah.
I
Mhm.
mean, look, for the audience, I first met Nola or saw Nola because meeting is maybe an exaggeration of the term, but during the pandemic years, and since then, you meet people on Zoom, and that's when I first saw her speak to an audience, a large audience, or in front of a large audience of national security leaders, retired force stars, former ambassadors, and speaking to National Security Council staff about the war, and basically saying quite pointedly and quite impressively, hey, people, great ideas. Here's some thoughts on it. But you know what? You better be getting these ideas out there to the American people. You better be going on Black radio. You better be going on to the shows that people listen to and care about. I wish they'd taken your advice. God knows we tried. But I mean, why did you, on a personal level, feel it was important to make that point?
Well, so at that point, I think this space was being called non-traditional media. Um, it's gone through several branding changes. So, in addition to national traditional legacy media, I was also uh, deeply entrenched in the non-traditional media space, which is another word for Black media. And so,
Hmm.
when you do a lot of Black media, one of the things that I love is that you have that instant connection with the audience, especially if I do Sirius XM, like the Reese Colbert show, where you have people that call in and you get to hear from everyday Americans. Or when I do WRD in Philadelphia, or do a radio spot in Los Angeles, or do the Roland Martin show, you have people in real time commenting. You get to see what they're thinking in real time. That is data
Wow.
that is I can't even find a word for how valuable that is. And what I was trying to do in that setting, Joel, I was trying to say, hey, you need to pay attention to what non-DC Beltway folks are saying. Our messaging isn't landing. Uh, and this is a problem. And then also being on a college campus, it's not landing with my students either. Right. So it was that combination of wanting to bring those voices into those spaces.
I mean, this is one of these lessons politically that in the after actions, the political parties theoretically pay attention to what they did or didn't do right.
Yeah.
And, although I hate to say it, I don't think the Democratic Party is really wanting to look into that so much, which I think is to our detriment. But, to me, it would mean that they would really want to look at how they communicated with audiences. And what you're laying out there is that there was a tremendous audience that was barely being touched
Hmm.
by
The
us,
base, mind
by
you, the
by
base.
the base. So it was there for the taking. I mean, it was open. It's like a green field. I mean, what would you tell Ken Martin today if you were sitting here with him, head of the DNC as a national security leader, as somebody with real expertise, right? You're not just a I don't want to say not just, but you're not just creating content to create content. You are an expert, subject matter expert, an SME, another really great acronym, right? And you know things. You have a PhD. You have written books. You have been appointed to advisory panels. You are of substance. And here you are saying, "Oh my God, I got to get this substance out there." What would you tell Ken Martin he needs to be doing with people like you?
Interestingly enough, when I bumped into Ken Martin, one, it was sometime last year during
Sorry.
Roland Martin Unfiltered. See, this is why I love new media. Like, you think I'm kidding. Like, I love all of this.
Bonk, bonk, bonk.
I love it.
I'm
It's
glad
so
this is
real.
so chill. That drives me crazy. I'm too old. Breathe deep. Breathe deep. Okay. It's so embarrassing. I can't believe I'm not even wearing a tie for this. Okay.
See, this is why my book is going to be important. It's okay not to be staffed. Um, so, I bumped into him right when he won. And I was like, I always tell people in the party who I am. I was like, you want to talk to me? I try to tell him, all the time. There's some folks like, Rep Greg Meeks who listens, but um what I would say right
Greg is
now,
special, by the way. Greg is very
huh?
special in that way.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. What I would say to him right now is this may be an unpopular opinion, but you know, um, kind of pay attention to Newsom. Uh, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to take the fight to them, and we have to stop being so fearful of whatever step we take right now might mess up two,
Yeah.
3 years from now. Because that's really kind of what gets us stuck, right? Um, and I think it's a good thing to be strategic and want to think things through. But like I said last night on Don Lemon's show, this is a 10 alarm fire. This is a 10 alarm fire, and we're still trying to beat back cruelty with niceties and statesmanship and hoping we can appeal to their better nature.
I of course have like 40 questions popping in my brain as you're talking because you're inspiring it. But the one I want to actually go focus on for a second is how dangerous it is to our politics if we aren't getting the politics right on
Mhm,
foreign policy issues. And I think about Afghanistan, basically 4 years ago, almost to the day, when President Biden withdrew the troops, the right call. The move was something that the base of the party had been asking for years. And when it happened, not only was it a very hard withdrawal, obviously on the ground for every reason that we all know, but there was like no cocoon protecting the president at all. There was no support from the base saying, "Yay, you, we applaud you because you're doing something we've been asking for 10 years." And there was no pushback against the dishonest, sort of gaslighting attacks against Biden. First and foremost, was that Trump is the guy who negotiated the lousy deal to get out of Afghanistan, including releasing 5,000 Taliban fighters into the wild to be ready to attack the nascent Afghan government. None of that was there. There was literally nothing there. And so, to your point with Governor Newsom, if he were, let's say, running the party today in 2025 and withdrawing from Afghanistan, he maybe would have thought a little bit about getting the ground prepared for that moment. And I feel like that moment was incredibly instructive for us and for it should have been instructive for people in our lane to see the dangers and the damage that could be wrought if we don't win the political narrative and arguments and get out there and try to fight and defend. And so your point is like right there. So let's take it a step further. We're coming into right now, it's already election season. It's already happening basically right now because they're gerrymandering, so they know the fight is in. Uh, and then, of course, we'll have primaries a couple years out. But when you're talking to candidates, when you're talking to political consultants, when you're talking to party officials, you know, is there anything that gets their interest in terms of the idea of getting a strong political cocoon built for them around foreign policy issues? Or are they reactive? I just want to. I guess I'm sort of laying that out with a very much of a strong opinion because hell, this is my podcast, so I don't have an opinion. But I also want your. This is why you're on because you're doing this work. I mean, what do you think? Am I off base, or are we still really needing to step it up here?
so you were asking about what sort of messaging am I hearing from electeds and, what's happening. One thing that I'm not seeing is how we were convened. Like I kind of affectionately refer to us kind of like the gang of 30 something, 30 plus.
Uh-huh,
There's like
uh-huh.
34 of us. Um, and I haven't seen that type of convening yet.
No,
And so I'm part of the Senate and House Content Creators Program. I don't know how, but I am. And
good.
so that's functioning differently from message setting. That's more of having access to congressional folk to talk to them. So that's a little bit different. And what I have been saying for the last couple months now is we need to level set. We need to get in front of the message. We need to create our own messages because right now we're just doing rapid response. You know, we w that's what we're doing right now. We're not running the table.
So important. I mean, rapid response, for folks who are watching this who don't have the pleasure of doing rapid response, which can be quite the stunner when you get the text at 4 in the morning to please come on TV at 6 a.m. because the Israelis have bombed Tehran or something like that. Rapid response is in many ways, I think, the media currency of foreign affairs.
Mhm.
Like throughout my 10 plus years of going on TV as a commentator, I have found that I am most often on because there's a breaking news
Yep.
event that occurs and they need someone who can quickly jump in and provide some color commentary to that. And that's where rapid response comes in, or if there's a hard attack. Um, but you're an expert, so I want to pull this back a little bit and ask you when you've got rapid responses, Elaine, but how do you as an expert then continue to engage in the big think?
Mhm.
How do you do the big think work that can actually be proactive and guide people and put the other side on its heels. Where does that fit in your work life?
That's a great question because you're right. As an academic, as a practitioner, we have to be the thought leaders. So we have to continue to write. We have to continue to produce um, uh, work that is valuable to our fields to move those forward. So what I've learned to do in the beginning of all of this, I was doing way too much, Joel. I'll be honest with you. Like when Cory Booker I was there the night when he finished his 25th hour. I was on the stairs with them when they did the Capitol Hill sit-in. I was there at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning for the big beautiful bill. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay. I need to figure out
You're
my
burning
lane
the midnight
here.
oil. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like there are hardcore content creators, like my friend Liz Booker, Jolly. They are hardcore creators. That's not necessarily what I do. I
Yeah.
inform, I educate. I have my own show, Nightcap, on the Persist Network. I have Substack. I add kind of that academic practitioner value, and I had to figure out that that's where I'm needed. Like the hardcore content folks who are probably out there right now protesting, they have to do that, and I have to do this. So you have to figure out those boundaries because you cannot do it all. You actually shouldn't want to do it all. You need to figure out what you're good at and get better at that. And that's what you want to do.
So then, let me ask the inverse of that, because you're pointing out to, like, the sort of the parameters within which you want to perfect your craft and how you want to make the impact on the world, and you see the creator world. Now go to the inverse, where you have sort of the former official think tank academic world, and they're looking at you and they're saying, "What is she? What is going on here?"
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
what about that world when you see that happening? Where do you fit on that lane? How does that function?
I am sure there are some people who would prefer for me to shut up.
Oh, no.
I have been called a radical recently, which I'm like, what? A
A
radical?
rabbit hole?
Yeah. Um, okay. So there
That's
are
not
many
nice.
people.
That's not nice at all.
There are many people in our world who just think of this as in cycles. And there are many people who are preparing for the next cycle and people are just assuming it's going to be us. So I am talking to those people and they're trying, to your point, in many ways they like that I have a profile, but because I do new media and I have been in this space for a while and it has less rules, if any, um, they are concerned about that. But I know who I am. I know what my brand is. And while I have friends who was use the MF word all day, all night long, that's not me. You know, I
Mhm.
know how I know how to show up in these spaces and add value. And I also think there aren't many Black people in this space that are speaking on these issues. And that is important to me, Joel. That is very important to me, that these hard topics that we think about, that we write about, that we talk about are digestible for everyday Americans. I genuinely see that as part of my ministry because I think of education and all of that stuff. I kind of really do think about it in terms of a ministry. And I feel that it would be remiss to have a platform and not to speak up, not to say something. And some people may disagree with that, and I'm fine with that, but I'm not backing down.
The way you describe that brings up a lot of sort of like incentive questions. And for again, for our audience here, right? Like, people in the foreign policy, national security space in Washington tend to be very insular in terms of their network and the people they engage. Oftentimes, it's those people who help them rise and get appointments, because appointments are the currency of they're the realm. the coin of the realm. That is, they're sort of like, oh, the title, and so saying less is
Mhm.
in many ways safer. And so then all of a sudden, here's Nola Haynes speaking her mind, saying things. So you might be advising senior people who then are very afraid to recommend you, perhaps, for something because they don't know what you've said. I'm assuming. I'm not saying that's always the case, but there's a lot of tape out there, and so it's almost like a generational shift, but
Mhm.
also and something where if the foreign policy community doesn't take on board the idea of what you're describing, the ministerial nature of communicating, then we're going to get lost and left behind. And what we get is Donald Trump, right? What we get is a flaccid incoherence of nonsense on America's role in the world.
Mhm.
And we have a bunch of people saying, why is he in power? And yet not engaging in the political process. And but you bring up something I really want to ask you more deeply about. You talk about the Black community. The last I checked, Black Americans are very invested in the national security of the United States of America. They make up a much larger share of the armed forces as a percent versus the percent of population. Uh,
Mhm.
this is a community that is directly impacted by national security decisions, and there's a very difficult history of the treatment by the national security community and the military towards Black America, towards racial integration, of course, but also testing of weaponry, and you name it. And there's a lot of depth there. And so, um, and it's also a forgotten community in many ways in terms of the way the policy elites talk and think. And
Mhm.
so, as a Black woman in this space, um, what is it right now that our policymakers are doing to um to sort of push it? I put this, I want to put this, I'm not going to be gentle. I find that the way the Trump administration is engaged right now is deeply harmful to race relations in America and to empowering Black Americans in particular, in terms of being feeling fully equal and empowered and equitable in this country, and this society. And we spent years trying to rebalance it. And you've been at the forefront of this. What is happening right now that the Trump team is doing? That how is it impacting your community? How are people talking about this? What I'm not very artful in the question. You're much. This is your world, but tell me, like, what is going on, and how is the Black community now looking at the way they're being treated by this administration?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the question. Thank you for not dancing around it. It's terrible, and I'll be honest, it's terrible, and it feels horrible. Right before I went on Don Lemon last night, I literally got an email saying that I didn't get a job. And I've been getting
Oh
a
boy.
lot of rejections. And it's because one of the things in which these executive orders have harmed the Black community, the 300,000 plus Black women that have been pushed out of the workforce and the 100,000 Black men that have been pushed out of the workforce, is this is punishment because, we don't have to necessarily wear our politics on our clothes. I am a Black woman, so it's probably safe to assume I'm part of the 92%. Yes, I probably am part of the 92%. So one of the words that I'm hearing is partisan, that it won't be so much about me not being able to get the job because I'm Black, but, to your point, I am outspoken. You can find me on social media, my stance, and not being a career person, but coming into this through the appointee realm. Typically, we are partisan. I mean, that's just the nature of the game. And I'm tired of people
That's
pretending
right.
like that's not what's really happening. Like that's
That's right.
dumb. Sorry. But
Mm, I'm with you.
oh my God, it's infuriating. But at the same time, I'm a professional person. I am not going to show up with a t-shirt that said F everybody, I voted for the Black lady. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to do that. I am a professional woman. I've never done that. It's unfortunately the other side who's put that on us. the demonization and weaponization of diversity, equity, and inclusion, of wokeness, everything about me. It doesn't matter what my accolades are, what my receipts are, what my bona fides are. I am diversity, equity, and inclusion. So when you are a private company, one of the things that's happening, Joe, private industry, they're not picking us up. So we're being pushed out of the federal workforce, but we're not being picked up by private industry, not in overwhelming numbers to make up for the 400,000 plus that's already been pushed out. And by the time this airs, that number is going to grow. So these very harmful policies that um, Trump and MAGA world and many Republicans, they are, the funny part is that they take umbrage when you call them racist. But I am all about the proof is in the pudding, boo. Like
Amen.
your actions, your policies are destructive. Even right now, sitting here in DC, sitting here in
That's
Southeast
right.
DC, where there are troops and federal agents roaming around in the city where crime has decreased 26%. Now,
No, no, no. The data is wrong. The data is
oh,
wrong.
right. Math. Ooh, math. Math and science. Ooh. Um, and yes, in terms of windows getting broken into, cars getting broken into, type of crime in a big city, that stuff is
Yeah,
happening. Does
sure.
that mean you need to deploy federal troops? It does not. So the way in which Black cities are being specifically targeted that have Black mayors, the way that the anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion, anti-wokeness has impacted our ability to survive and work, Joel. And not only that, the way that it's also showing up in higher education institutions who unfortunately are bending the knee, that's also going to impact enrollment. That's also going to impact education attainment. We are going to be back at a time where you're going to have very few folks of color on these college campuses. It's only going to be very wealthy, mostly white kids, right? And certain type of white kids. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how many folks in West Virginia or places like that in Appalachia are going to be roaming around on these campuses because in
Well, they're
as
not
much
going to be able to get any loans for it either.
exactly, because the racial and the class issue go hand in hand. So it's very harmful. I am trying my hardest to stay uplifted. Thankfully, I'm very busy with new media and writing. Georgetown canceled my international relations and race course this semester. Um,
Canceled. Just canceled it.
they said it was due to budget cuts. So,
That's
it's,
like the Stephen Colbert due to financial reasons. Yeah.
yeah.
Sure.
So,
Budget
but
cuts. I'm
those
sorry
are
to
very
bust your
real
chops.
hits. I'm a real person and the hits keep coming. And, I don't know what can be done about it. I remember asking Hakeem Jeffries this question months. I think this is right after the election, and he gave a talk at a synagogue here in DC. And I asked him a question about jobs, and he kind of didn't have an answer. Like, well, yeah, it's going to be bad. Okay. And I'm a Leader Jeffries fan, but I just remember that moment, and here I sit right now as a Black woman with all the expertise, with all the degrees, with all the network. I know everybody and their mama. You know what I'm saying? But
Well, that's the thing that's so pernicious. I mean, there's so many levels of perniciousness to this, but the thing that really stands out as horrifically hostile and negative is the idea that a person of color, a Black woman in your case, cannot be successful
yeah,
unless somehow they got an unfair advantage, promotion, leg up. So by extension, then they must lose whatever achievements they have. I mean, this whole concept that any Black woman who was hired to a position of power somehow was a fake hire is
yeah.
so deeply racist and hostile
Mhm.
and just beyond contempt. And I think for us as a society, it's ripping us apart, right? And the challenge here is how, despite the attempts to rip us apart, we don't get torn apart.
Yeah.
In many ways, and I actually want to bring this back to your national security expertise, right? if you look at the long arc of the mirage of Vladimir Putin in Donald Trump's eye,
Mhm,
much of the sort of objective, if you looked at Putin, is how to destroy the United States.
mhm,
And uh, couldn't it get a better master class in it than trying to rip apart the
mhm.
country at its most vulnerable? Like our Achilles heel is our racial
Yep, that's our pressure
divides,
point.
right?
Yep.
That is, if you want to blow up America,
Mhm,
put your finger on that button.
mhm.
And now we have a president who lives for that, right? Like this is actually what it is. So put on your national security expertise hat.
Mhm.
Tell us, tell the audience what impact on our national security are we feeling and will we continue to feel by the hostile actions towards Black Americans right now? How does that impact our national security?
Well, it's layered. So the first thing that I want to say is going all the way back to 2015, when Trump first came tumbling down that escalator, that elevator, um, you know, Black Americans were specifically targeted regarding misinformation, disinformation online, strategically because Black folks, not just Black Americans, but the diaspora writ large, is the largest population online. So where do you target them? Online. So there was so much intentional disinformation around Hillary Clinton. And then the same thing with Kamala Harris. I can't tell you how many Black men I heard repeat the talking point that she put the most amount of Black men in jail ever in the history of history. And this is coming from troll farms in Eastern Europe, right? And so we know this. We know this information. That is a vulnerability. It is a pressure point that has been tugged on successfully. And so now where we are, how it showed up in this last election cycle, you have a larger percent of Black men that were peeled off, uh, that voted more for Trump. Not in a massive way. Not in a massive way, because Black men still overwhelmingly voted for Kamala Harris. But you see it peeling off slowly and slowly. And what they do is they go after the rappers. They go after the vulnerable who are maybe in jail, or you commute their sentence or you pardon them. They go after a very specific part of the Black community. They advertised on Tubi, they advertised on Christian radio saying, do you want your kid walking into the restroom, and, your young girl walking into a restroom and there's a man in the restroom referring to trans kids. They knew where to find us, they knew how to scare us, and they knew how to divide us. So, in terms of a national security threat, it opens us up to more attacks, right? It opens us up to becoming so fractured that you actually just don't know who your enemy or who your ally is. And that is the dangerous part of this. And then there's also the military side. What incentive would you have? Why would you want to go into the military when you're seeing when you're seeing Hexeth and Donald Trump basically revive uh, the KKK? You know what I mean? Bring
The
politics to military
Confederacy, right there.
graduations. And why would you want to participate in that and be part of that? Why
Right.
would you want to? And, there's also supposed to be legal protections for that, but I don't know what happened to strict scrutiny. But anyway, um, so it's compounded, Joel. It's the military aspect, it's the social aspect, it's the part that I'm worried about is how that is going to factor into this slow march of violence that we're getting closer to. And this is my political science hat. In situations like this, there typically is only one way out. I will say this though,
Mm.
because the way in which we got here looks a little different, say from a traditional coup that wasn't military or another country installing a leader. Well, so we know. so we
Russia, Russia, Russia hoax. Russia, Russia.
um this looks a little different, but make no mistake, this is a march towards authoritarianism, to a dictatorship. And the part that scares me is the next step is possibly totalitarianism. That's the military state aspect. That's what's being deployed and tested out in Los Angeles and DC. This is what I worry about, that those strands are going to be tugged on, those racial cords. to where violence is going to be possibly racially motivated in the street, and that is going to be the trigger to something really unpleasant and really scary.
It goes without saying that some of our greatest national leaders have been Black in the national security community. Early in my career, I served at the State Department when Secretary Powell
Mhm.
was running the building.
He's everybody's
Uh,
favorite.
I mean, he is, but there's a reason why. He had class and he had expertise and he had charisma. I'll never forget. We were at a little farewell get together for someone in December of 2004. I'm dating myself, and I was standing there waiting to get a little drink, and all of a sudden, this boom, this hand went right on my shoulder. Oh, I look back, and there it is, Secretary Powell laughing. So happy, so cool. You know, I hate to say it, but I think in this administration, if he were chairman, he would have been fired,
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
And and
automatically.
and and they would have said it was a diversity hire or something. Yeah, I mean, this is a lot. And for listeners, go people watching our show here, just look at the history of the contribution of the Black American community to going back to Civil War days in terms of protecting and saving the nation and henceforth. We lose all of us as Americans, we lose when we're at each other like this.
Mhm.
And to me, as an American Jew, a lot of times we say anti-Semitism is sort of like a canary in the coal mine of the health of a society. And I think you could say the same about how Black America is treated here in the United States, because it's the original sin of the country, the enslavement of Africans, and how we treat the descendants of those enslaved people really demonstrates the health or lack thereof of our society.
I agree.
Um, Nola, we could go on and on and on,
Yeah.
and I want to. We'll do a part two. But what I really want to make sure we do before we go, and first of all, thank you for being open to such a different kind of conversation from foreign policy alone, but a dynamic, diverse, real conversation. These are the real people, folks, who are making the ideas that help guide our national security policy. They're real people. They're not computers. They're not faceless bureaucrats. They're not Elon Musk technocrats. They're real human beings with heart and soul. So Nola, thank you for sharing who you are with our audience today. And if you could also put in a plug for where people can find you, because I know I'll get it wrong because there's too many high level platforms you're engaged in. But please share with us where they can find you as well.
And so I want to say very quickly, thank you so much for this space and this conversation. We had a conversation about Black and Jewish relations, and I'm actually doing a special on that about on my show because it means a great deal to me. Um, my dad raised me with the historical knowledge of how important the Black and Jewish relationship was during civil rights and beyond. So I just want to say, first of all, thank you for being an allyship and a really good thought partner in that regard. Thank you. And how you can find me. So I am living for my Substack. I've just been wanting to write so much. So you can find me on Substack at Security Brief, or my name, Nola Haynes. My Instagram, Nola Haynes. Blue Sky Threads, Nola Haynes. LinkedIn, I only do professional stuff there, so you won't find a ton of my media stuff there. Those prying national security eyes. But I am in a lot of places. But seriously, if you want to get a taste of what goes on in here, and then also my media stuff, my Substack, Security Brief, or Nola Haynes is my Substack. And Joel, thank you for this conversation. This has been wonderful.
Thanks, Nola. Thanks, Nola. The prolific Nola Haynes, thought leader in there, social media entrepreneur, and very importantly, a political commentator influencer. We have
PCI.
now branded that. Thank you, PCI, Dr. Nola Haynes. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in today on Making Sense of the World, and look forward to seeing you again soon on our next episode.